Hey everybody, welcome to episode 3, Not So Amateur Hour. Melissa is going to do her thing and give us a little background.
On this episode, we are going to have Sharon Sigler, Sylvia Schnople, and John David Brown III joining us. They are artistic and creative directors from local community theaters here in the Charlotte metro area. We're going to discuss how they are raising the bar for local community theaters in Statesville, Davidson, and Newton Conover.
Yes, and it was a very interesting episode, full of challenges on our end. They were fabulous. Nothing they did, but we were plagued with technical issues, mic issues, weather issues that impacted the episode, and they were just such troopers and went along with it. And we really appreciate them for that. And then also had an awesome conversation with us. So with that, I hope you enjoy episode 3. Welcome everyone to episode 3, Not So Amateur Hour. I'm Simmon Fecho, one of your hosts, and I'm here with my co-host,
Melissa Statema.
Yay! So we are very, very excited to have 3 special guests today. 3 artistic directors from local community theaters here in the Charlotte metro area, and they're here to talk with us about how they work against the idea of amateurism and help to raise the bar in production quality and challenge perceptions surrounding amateur theater productions. So we have John David Brown, who's the creative director at the Green Room Community Theater in Newton Conover area. And then Sylvia Schnople, who is the artistic director of Players in Davidson, and Sharon Sigler, artistic director of Theater Statesville in Statesville. So we are so happy to have this group. Thank you guys for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
To
Super
get
excited.
kicked off, I just want to kind of go around and have you all talk a little bit about how long you've been an artistic director overall, and specifically at your current theater, and then just a brief description of what being an artistic director means at your theater, and then a brief personal career background. So let's start with John David.
Okay, so I'm the creative director at the Green Room, as you said, and the title artistic director is not. We don't technically have an artistic director. We have an executive director that handles mostly the business fundraising side of the theater, and then she's also part of the artistic decision making, but that's really falls under the umbrella that I tend to do most of the work that I do. My background is in theater education and design, and so I was hired originally with the Green Room as a education director, and I realized quickly that was it was sort of like they had an executive director. They hired me as an education director, and quickly learned that in order I had several hats that I was filling, and along with the education, I was doing a lot of the publicity and press releases, as well as costuming, which I had a background in costuming, and so I became the creative director about 4 years after I was hired. I was hired in 2001.
Wow.
So I've been there about 18 years, which is hard for me to believe. The direction of the job, it's just evolved through the years as our theater has grown. When I was first hired, the Green Room was doing 4 shows a season, and now we've been up to 10 productions a year, plus 5 or 6 smaller productions with the Green Bean Players and other kind of offshoots of our Creative Works program.
Thank you so much. We're so excited to have you, David.
I'm excited to be here.
All right. Well, Sylvia, why don't you go next?
Sure. Well, like David, I think that we all wear many, many hats and would do a little bit of everything. But officially, I've been with DCP for 5 years. Prior to that, I had worked a lot at the Green Room with David, so I've known him since 2001, so we go back a long way. And I have worked as education director at numerous theaters in the area. I've taught on university and college level. I've directed from New York to Florida. So, have done a little bit of costuming and just done everything, worn many hats, as I think we all do in theater. So I've been with DCP for 5 years, a little over 5 years now. That's hard to believe. And like David, we have an executive director, Matt Merrill, who we really work well as a team. Matt does handle more of the business end of things, but he's got a great artistic eye as well. So, so over the years, he's kind of given more of the artistic primarily to me, and but I run everything by him. We do. Oh gosh, it seems like we're adding programming all the time. We have 5 main stage shows. We have a small theater in Davidson that seats about 110 or 20 if we squish them in. And so we do our what I call the school season shows in there for the main stage. And then we do summer shows over at the Duke Family Performance Hall on the Davidson campus. And in addition, we have a strong youth program, and we do 3 to 5, what we call, it's the Connie Company, named after Constance Welch. So we do 5 youth programs a year, which are not under my jurisdiction, if you would say, but we are all, as I say, we all work as a team, and numerous camps and outside programming. So we've really added a lot at DCP. We do a Booze and Brews, we do Shakespeare on the Green, but really our core is our main stage shows. So anything that you see on stage, from hiring the creative team, the directors, the designers, to the scheduling, to help paint scenery if we need it, I do that, or I find someone to do that. So that's really my background. I have an MFA in acting and directing with an emphasis in children's theater, and do children's theater still some, but my true love is directing and programming. So I'm glad to be here. It's exciting to listen to everyone and share ideas.
All right, Sharon, why don't you go ahead and you're our last contestant.
I'm on. Sharon Sigler. I'm the baby of the group. I've only been the artistic director at Theater Statesville now for a year and a half, a little over. I started just as an actress at the theater, and soon evolved into directing shows for them. And then I was kindly asked to apply for the artistic director position when the current one left. And I have gone through a metamorphosis since I've been here. I think that we have grown considerably since I've been here in the 3 years. We are producing what I feel are incredibly put together shows, and I'm very proud of it. We have a very small theater right now, not physical theater, but company. We have, I think we produce, on a good year when we're not shut down, we produce 5 to 6 shows a year, depending on whether or not we do a summer show. We do not have a permanent space of our own. One is being built. And so we are anxiously awaiting a move into a permanent theater space, which will hold 220 people with flexible seating. And that will be in downtown Statesville at the new Playhouse. So I'm very thrilled about that. I come to Statesville from New York. I studied in New York. I studied in California. I'm union, not equity anymore. I let that go so I can continue with community theater, but still SAG-AFTRA. I studied at the Strasberg Institute and with Robert Rentz at the Pasadena Playhouse, and then at Cal State Fullerton for a while. I worked as a professional actor for quite a while until I got married and then decided to have children. And so I put the acting on hold, but established a theater program at a local school from scratch for K through 6. And we had an incredibly successful program. I also ran a theater alliance in Northern California for over 150 theaters, where I was their main resource for everything. And I did an awards program that spanned those 150 theaters with volunteer judges and telecast locally in Sacramento. It was a big deal. And we had a wonderful time. And now that's thriving. That organization is thriving since I've left and when I moved back to New York. And worked at a high school in Westchester, New York, where I directed 5 musicals. I was there 5 years before moving down here and loved my high school students and also did acting coaching for them for their auditions for colleges. And I still hear from 95% of them about how they're doing. And the connections you can make as a teacher is overwhelming. Anyway, but I'm here now and I'm thrilled to be here. And I've got a lovely group of people I'm working with, including Melissa and Simmon.
Thank you so much. We're so happy to have you here in the area and here on the podcast with this group. And what an awesomely well-rounded, dynamic group of people to have on. So thank you guys for lending your time and coming and speaking with us. We really, really appreciate it. So as we start to dig into this topic, I just wanted to kind of give some background on the impact, some context there. So $22.3 billion in revenue to local, state, and federal governments every year. That's what comes from the entertainment industry as a whole, which is huge, huge dollars. And that's a yield well beyond the collective $4 billion that's set aside for arts allocation, which is almost nothing in comparison. And in 2017, the National Endowment for the Arts reports that 40% of the population, which is 130 million people, participated in performing arts in the previous 12 months. So 24% of those people, which is 31.2 million, attended a live play or musical. So those are huge numbers.
That's a lot.
When it comes to community and amateur theaters, the American Association of Community Theaters noted that more than 6,000 theaters across the United States and its territories are community theaters that are producing shows and making theater available to people across the country and U.S. territories. Over 1 million volunteers serve in community theaters, and 83 million people see community theater productions annually.
Holy.
I'm going to say that again, 83 million people. That's no tiny little number.
And thank you, each and every one of you.
Yes, we love you. So from the AACT website, Steve Spiegel, who works with Theatrical Rights Worldwide, which is one of the licensing companies, he says, during my career, I've had the privilege to work with tens of thousands of theatrical organizations. I'm most proud of my affiliation with community theaters. By promoting unity, creating an accepting environment for debate, self-expression, and interactivity, community theater is the centerpiece to the fabric of our society, an unmatched component to the very health of our neighborhoods, towns, and cities. Also on the site, Patty Duke, who is a famous actress, quoted saying, I have worked in community theater and so-called non-professionals are anything but. The work there is so real and so good that I was stimulated to do more. And yet, having all that been said, there is a connotation surrounding amateurs, and even within the published definition of what amateur means, it doesn't quite match the gravity and the impact of the work of the amateur. So the definition that you can find if you look it up in Merriam-Webster, it sort of lacks reverence for the dedication and commitment that amateur performers and just amateur in any field really has. So the first definition is one who engages in a pursuit, study, science, sport as a non-profession, which is fine. There's nothing negative there. But then the second definition is one lacking in experience and competence in an art or science. And I think even just from this call with the folks that we have here, I don't think there's any lack in experience or competence. So even in this published definition, you have something that's sort of leaning towards the negative, which is disappointing, I think. And the etymology of the word amateur comes from the Latin word for lover, and then the French word to love something, and to do something for the love of it. And I think that's what you find most in community settings, is that folks are doing it in their spare time on top of everything else that they have going on in their lives. And it's mostly made up of volunteers who are doing it because they can't imagine a life not doing it. Which I think is something to be respected and valued, and something that we're really big on here at Downstage, right, is, and part of our mission is to help give people insight into the work of amateur theaters, amateur actors, everyone who works in an amateur setting, and kind of elevate the respect level for what those folks do. So as we dig in, what do you guys feel is the biggest misconception about community theater?
I'll start a little bit if you want me to, and then we can maybe build on it. I just know that this may be my naivety, but I grew up in the eastern part of North Carolina, and we did not have a community theater. So when I went to college, I went to Appalachian State University, which had a wonderful theater program. And my major was education, theater education. The thing that sort of surprised me after I left was we really did not talk about community theater at all. I mean, and I think the program was awesome, and I learned how to do a little bit of everything because that's how the program was set up. So it perfectly enabled me to thrive in a community theater setting, but the whole concept of community theater and what it was, I don't know how well defined it has been, or maybe 25 years ago, nationally, so that, it was either like theater education, teaching theater in a high school, or being in a professional theater, which, I suppose community theater is kind of professional, but it's a different kind of profession. So, I don't know how far down the root of the negative or dismissive attitude people have towards community theater goes.
I'll jump in with what David is saying. And as you said that, David, it makes me think back to when I was in college, back in the dark ages. And I don't remember, I went to UNCG for undergraduate and graduate work. And I don't remember, we did some internships with the community theater, or I think it's Greensboro Community Theater. But I didn't grow up with a community theater in my little small hometown. And so there was never really, what is community theater? Can you make a profession out of community theater? And I think it really wasn't until I started going to SETC and saw the community theater at that time, all the community theaters, and they still do, they would have their competitions there, and started really seeing workshops on community theater, that I began to understand what community theater really was. And when I was at SETC and went through the job searches, many of the jobs for full-time graduates of either an undergraduate or graduate program were at community theaters, whether they were youth theaters or traditional community theaters. And so I think that's where my knowledge of community theater and the strength of it first began, was job searching and realizing that, yeah, the actors tend to go to the summer theaters or more the professional theaters, but everyone else seems to either go to community theater or educational theater, and sometimes those two are very closely related. So that's, but what you're saying about the misconception, of course, I think people think that they're amateurs, they're not any good. But I think just looking, as you said earlier, I think looking at the three of us and the great community theaters we have in this region, it's unbelievable. I always talk about, well, I'll specifically say Catawba County, I always talk about that they have two such phenomenal community theaters. But in every community theater I've worked, they've had the best facilities, the best, the best talent, it's not, they're not getting paid for it, but they're doing it because of the root word to love. And I've worked in New York with, equity actors and not off Broadway, not Broadway, off Broadway. And there's not that much difference. You're all doing it for the love. And that's kind of where I feel community theater is misjudged, is that it means it's not any good. When it's sometimes better than, not always, but sometimes. You can always have a bad show no matter what your budget is.
I agree with you, Sylvia. I too did not learn about community theater in college, but I did at the studios that I studied at.
Mm-hmm.
And I was taught that community theater is your training ground. That's where you put on your training wheels. And that's where you make your mistakes if you are going to make any.
Mm-hmm.
That's where you can really grow as a performer. And so when I did community theater before I got my union card and all that, I really learned so much. And I looked at it as a learning experience, that this is where I'm going to learn how to do it. Right. And I really feel I did. And when I taught the kids in high school, I taught them that. I said, go out, do a lot of off Broadway shows, because this was in New York. Right. I said, there'll be workshops. You're not going to get paid for them, most likely, but you're going to learn so much if you let it all flow in. Right. And that's how I feel about it. And I don't know about you guys, but I have worked with people like myself who let equity or union cards pass so that they can come back to community theater and do what they want to do because they are passionate about it.
Right.
It doesn't matter if we get paid if we love it.
Right.
In this regard.
I had an experience when, when I was working with in professional theater, some professional theaters. And, I would see sometimes the love of the art leaving the actors' eyes because they were doing it for a paycheck. There was they had to have this job. Whereas in community theater, they don't have to show up. It's their love. They can sometimes, except during COVID days, they can make a living doing something else, but then they can come and feed their passion and feed their souls during rehearsals. And that's what I think community theater shines at. But I liked what you said about the training. And I know the Green Room and Statesville, and we are all very passionate about training young artists, whether it's technicians. I mean, I have a stage manager that's leaving me now who's going to college in New York, and I have no doubt in 4 years she'll be on Broadway. Or whether we're providing opportunities for students to have that transition from educational theater, high school or college, mainly high school, to see what it's like really more in the trenches. And so I see us as a training ground, sending people away, but also for people who have gone and who have tried this, who want to now be a lawyer during the day and be a tap dancing actor at night. So I think that's the beauty of community theater.
Yeah, until we moved here a little under 6 years ago, I didn't even really know about community theater. Where we lived previously, there weren't any. And then and looking up something for our family to do, I found out there was Theater Statesville because we moved to Statesville. And then shortly thereafter found out about the Green Room, and then realized, oh my gosh, I can actually do stuff at these theaters, use my degree, choreograph, be in the shows. And it has been life-changing. And I'm really sad that in college, it was not a discussion of, you can do this for fun, work on the technical side and maybe make a little money, but maybe not. It has been life-altering being in community theater, and I'm very thankful for all of your community theaters and the other ones that are around as well, all so close together.
It's too to hear you guys talk, because I grew up in Pennsylvania, not far from Philly, about an hour from Philly, and less than 3 hours from New York. And what we had very established community theaters, not many, but a couple. And it was so much a part of my growing up doing community theater. Mm-hmm. And then also going to see professional theater, and sort of a juxtaposition of those two things, butt up against each other. Right. And so a lot of comparison, and so it's really interesting to hear folks not really being invested in or hearing about community theater until they went into their professional careers or got into college, or, you know, it's kind of interesting, the difference in experience. And Joey too, my fiance, he grew up in Virginia and went to a lot of competitions and things. And that's something that people around me in Pennsylvania did really at all. So I was like, what, competition I didn't know you could, outside of like a dance competition or, you know, a single skill, not so much theater, which is a combination of skills. So very, very interesting to kind of hear the differences. In your careers and in your lifetime working within these community theaters, how have they changed? And how has the work that you've done in them changed over that period?
It's a good question. Well, I'll say that, you know, when my first job at a community theater, well, right out of graduate school, I started working at Fort Lauderdale Children's Theater, which was a children's theater, but, you know, as a community, the children they weren't paid. But my first big job was at Raleigh Little Theater, which is a huge community theater in Raleigh. It's still, you know, we had 2 designers, we had 2 TDs, 2 costume designers. I mean, it's a massive theater. But, you know, I think one thing I can say is that there are more people that are interested in it, which I think is great. But I think in some ways with the rise of, and you guys may disagree with me, but with the rise of these mega blockbuster musicals, it became somewhat harder for it's become a little harder for community theaters to always live up to the spectacle. In Davidson, for example, we do, as I said, we do most of our shows at Armour Street Theater, which seats 110, 20. It's an old church. And so we really can't do big musicals in that space. We do our big musicals in the summer. Now, we are hopefully in the next 5 years, we'll get a new space, 3 to 5 years, we'll get a new space. But and so that's been a challenge for us because we do a lot of dramas, we do a lot of comedies. So people want to see, you know, they want to see the big name musicals, and we just don't have that capability of doing those shows. So we really had to build that community. I mean, we have great audience space. We sell out 95% of all of our shows, and you know, and so we have built that reputation. But that's been a challenge for us to not be able to do these big shows, and people want to see that.
Yeah, I find that people are not as open to drama, and certainly we do better with a comedy. Right. But I do agree with you that musicals are what everybody wants to see. Those of us who are entrenched in theater background and maybe performed it are very much drawn to good dramas, to good storytelling. Right. We did Proof in February, right before the lockdown. And in fact, Melissa was starring in it, and she was amazing. It was so well received, and the people who came, those people who do other community theaters, came and thanked us, came over to me and thanked me for doing quote unquote real theater. Right. And I think that you're right, Sylvia. The actors, the performers, the technical people, and the ADs, all of us, we want to do some meaty stuff, but the audiences really want that fun musical, and it's not always available to us. Right. We perform in a dinner theater. We have to rent out Mac Gray Auditorium to do our big musical, one a year, because we can't afford to do more than that because of the cost of the rental.
Of the royalties. So that's the way we are with the Duke Family Performance Hall. It seats 450, 500 on the Davidson campus, and we love that facility. It's gorgeous, but we do our one big musical, you know, a year. And we were doing Putnam County Spelling Bee when COVID hit, and so that was going to be at our Armour Street Theater. So we will do small musicals occasionally, but we really, it's a break even because of the production costs.
Exactly. That's exactly what hits us at our dinner theater. We break even.
I don't think people realize the cost of a musical and the space involved, because we have at the Green Room is at the Old Post Office Playhouse in downtown Newton. We have the McCrary Theater is a great space. It seats about 400. And we can do well with musicals in that space. We also have a black box theater, which seats 90 people, and it's awesome for drama. It's awesome for small musicals too, but it costs us if we do musicals just because of the cost of the production versus the amount of ticket sales we can generate from it. So it's very difficult for us to do musicals in small spaces.
Absolutely.
It is. And as you said, I mean, I think that our actors and a great deal of our audiences really want to see drama. They want to see something that makes them feel. But on the flip side, we will have audience members that say, that show made me feel, I just want to laugh. And so, you really can't please everybody. So I think that one thing I think that's great about having so many community theaters in our region is that, like, the Green Room can do amazing big musicals. So it's great that we tell, okay, go see something at the Green Room, or go see something at HCT or Piedmont or Lee Street or Statesville, and we can all work together to make sure that everybody gets something that they enjoy. And they can come to see us for, what we call our February show, which is usually our kind of edgy drama.
Melissa and I met doing Bright Star at the Green Room,
which was amazing. I still cry thinking about it.
Me too. It was so perfect.
Oh, so just perfect.
It's a good example of a musical that's also a very good drama.
Yes.
Right. And I saw it on Broadway, David, and I'm telling you, yours rivaled it.
Oh, yeah. It was incredible.
But doing that, it's so interesting because I was actually really, although I know it was a North Carolina story, and I hope in North Carolina do it because it is a North Carolina story. At the same time, I was actually really surprised that the Green Room was taking a chance with it, because one knows it, and it is dramatic. It's not like it's not The Drowsy Chaperone, even though Drowsy Chaperone is less known, it's still a comedy. So I was like, wow, this is a big risk, because it could go the other way. And it was really impressive to see a theater take a chance on it. So that was really, it's interesting when you're talking about selecting programming, because
I was going to say, I sit in on the play selection committee that our board of directors, spends a lot of time deciding what shows we're going to do every season. And really, we were talking about the comedies versus the dramas, but name recognition is, you hear that over and over and over again. And so we've passed on some really awesome titles, because our theater, our community, even if they are a season ticket holder, oh no, we're going to save our ticket for Grease, or whatever. We try to do 100%, no matter if we're doing Bright Star or Grease or any of the other shows, whether they're known or not. But it does make a difference as to like Bright Star, which we're super proud of. It was not certainly one of our best box office successes, although artistically, I couldn't be any more proud of the work that David and the rest of the cast and creative team did for that show.
Yeah. And I think the one thing I was going to ask too, I know it's interesting because I think I've seen it go both ways. I've seen some theaters really, obviously ticket sales are important no matter what, because when you're making something, you want people to see it.
Right.
But at the same time, often the dollars to support the artistic impetus that we all have, it's often not coming from the ticket sales. And although it's really critical to get butts and seats, because you just want that's why we do theater. We want to share what we put together for people that enjoy it. At the same time, often it's very much dependent on getting really, really great sponsors. And it's good to see that we have in this area good sponsors who are willing. But
absolutely.
But what for you guys, how much of the support comes from your donors versus ticket sales?
That's a great question.
That's a great question. And I don't know for Davidson, I don't know. I mean, Matt would know those details down to the penny because he's very detailed and focused on that. We, as I said, we do have, we do have a very strong season ticket base. Our season tickets, I know in some theaters, the season ticket model tends to be going down, but ours is going up. And we do pick threes and we do, all sorts of different things, but our season ticket base is going up. So much so though, because of our small theater, that our Christmas show will sell out a year ahead. The minutes it's announced, it will sell out just based on season tickets. Mm-hmm. So there have been times when we have, only a couple of hundred tickets of single show tickets available for our Armour Street shows. Now the Duke over, is a whole different matter, but we do have we have a strong donor base, and we have some seasoned sponsors who we call them our legacy sponsors, who certainly help, but we really do rely on those ticket sales. It's a combination. I mean, I know there's everything, but that's something that's big for us.
So do we. Being the small theater that we are, we really do mostly rely on our ticket sales. We have been blessed with a couple of seasoned sponsors, but just a couple. And it is actually the goal of our marketing committee now. It was before COVID to
right.
Everything as it was.
BC.
To try to build that we have show sponsors and season sponsorships available, and also just individual donors. And to be able to create a program much the same as the Incredible Green Room, where it's a book of sponsorships. You could do that, David, but I'm just saying how incredible it is.
They do a great job with that.
They do a great job. What an incredible community support system you have. And that's something that we are now currently, since we've reorganized, trying to build on.
Well, I know that it's a balancing act. You want to have good sponsors that are enjoying the program and that want to support the arts and community. And we are blessed with some wonderful sponsors at the Green Room. And I can't say enough about them. And also, you want to attract the acting talent, like Simmon and Melissa, to come and do shows like Bright Star. And so you want to kind of find the right balance of shows that attract really strong actors, and also, but you want shows that will sell tickets to your community, and you kind of have to have your pulse on the community. And I think we've done a pretty good job of that over the last few years. Everything always changes, and every year we're trying to kind of, rethink through that, like who is who. And I think there are some areas we can work on for sure. But you want to, like, there are certain dramas that would be awesome to do, but our season ticket base may not quite appreciate some of the content. But the awesome thing is there are other community theaters in the area that, that are doing that. So that's more support in that direction. And I mean, I certainly love going to see all kinds of theater. So I've been very fortunate to get to go to all the community theaters in the area and enjoy all kinds of shows.
I think you hit on something important too, David, which is that, the interesting thing too about sponsorships and donors is, to a certain extent, you need to be able to prove that you have people coming to the shows, get donors and sponsors to be interested in being able to offer them advertising or, different pluses and bonuses to them putting their money into what you do, as well as showing them that you're capable of putting out a great product.
That it's going to take a while.
Yeah.
With their money.
Yeah, exactly. So that's really important as well. So I wanted to kind of take some time also to talk about varying experience levels, because as we've said, you have a staff who works for the theater who is, they're paid, they're made up of professionals. And then you have, designers and things like that who are also paid and set up as sort of in more of the professional vein. And then your actors, they may have varying experience levels. So you may have someone who is, like Sharon said, who has done, so much work as an actress, and someone who is in their first show, who has never never done a show ever. So what's that like dealing with the varying experience levels and selecting shows for varying experience levels and things like that?
Well, I think that it's much like life, everyday life. You have to be able to understand every person and what they are capable of, and put them in the proper place so that they don't overextend themselves, but also are feeding their soul with the art that they want to do. We have a place in our, when we did our Christmas Carol traveling show in downtown Statesville, that cast would be about 50, 60 people, many of which had never done a show before. And it gave them a jumping point to whether it was a small role or maybe even a larger one, but it gave them a jumping point to then feel the confidence and perhaps learn some good skills to then audition for other shows. And we have had a lot of people do that, do the Christmas Carol, then come and audition for other shows where they can graduate to larger parts. I like to think that our big musical also does that it gives them their training wheels. And I try to incorporate as many people as I can in those big shows so that they're given their due, so they can learn something.
That's great. And we kind of do the same thing too with, I mean, I know the Green Room has so many shows that there's so many opportunities, but with Davidson, we don't have quite that many shows. And so with our dramas, of course, with our Armour Street shows, there are 5 to 8 casts, generally 5 people to 8 people in the cast. And so we really have to make sure we get the best of the best. So we do 2 things. And my personal philosophy is 2 different ways. We offer, we'll be in our 3rd year of our 4th year of our annual Booze and Brews Play Festival, which started out as an idea to do a 10-minute play festival, sell beer, ghost stories, the whole thing. And now it's huge. I mean, it sells out every year. Now we do this in our lab space. We have a rehearsal hall, which we call the Actors Lab. And it seats about, I can squish 70 in there. If Matt's not there, if he's there, I can squish about 60 in there. Because he's always like, oh my gosh, you have too many people in here. But we have 30 to 40, like you said, with you guys doing your Christmas Carol, we have 30 to 40 people. It's not a huge time commitment. They can be in 1 play or they can be in 2 or 3 plays, but they get that taste to see if it's something they really want to do or not. And then I always have this, I always try to find the potential in people. And I, as a director, will be very risky sometimes. And David knows this about me as well. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. I will be risky with the people that I cast. And if I see potential and I go, I have 8 weeks to really bring something out in that person. So,
I agree.
Sometimes you just
We have
feel
similar
it. Sometimes
philosophies on that,
sometimes
yes.
it doesn't, But that's kind of the way we try to do is give them the opportunities, but really nurture the talent that we have.
Well, one of the ways the Green Room set up, and it served us pretty well, is we do in the main stage season, which is, oh my gosh, it's six or 7 shows every year. That's the big theater, and one of them has to be an all youth production and get the full budget of the other shows, so it gets an equal amount as our big musical or any of the dramas we do on that stage. And so that's one area where, of course, it's youth talent, but it's treated with the full design and everything. And the other one is supposed to be a family show. And the whole theory behind that is that there other than maybe some churches, there's very few opportunities for mothers and fathers or whoever parents and their teenagers and young children to all do something collectively together. So the potential is there to do a show where you could have multiple generations on stage. So one show has to be picked that kind of fits that category. So for example, when we did Peter Pan several years ago, we had one character was an Indian. One character was a pirate. One family member. The mother ran a spotlight. One of their daughters was playing flute in the pit. And the other kid was a lost boy. So you had this whole family participating in theater And you, so you get various skill levels that way. And I realize that's not exactly the question you asked, but.
Oh, I think that's one of my favorite things that you guys do. And we were so looking forward to Sister Act this summer because we had a full family in that for the first time. And we have done some musicals where we have, and we'll, if we know there's like, when we did Annie a couple of years ago, we had some fathers and daughters, and I think we have mother and daughter in there as well that we'll really like, okay, let's cast them both because it's such a great experience for them to be on stage together. And your youth programs, I mean, you've got that strong youth program, and we do 3 main stage Connie Company shows, which are all youth casts and fully staged. And then we have a program that Katie Mullis, our education director, started a couple of years ago, which has been hugely successful. It's called the TS3 program. It's Teen Summer Stock Series. And it's an audition-only program for teens through college age. And they meet for 2 weeks all day. And at the end of that 2 weeks, they do either a fully staged musical or a fully staged drama or comedy. So there's 2 separate programs. And we've done things like In the Heights. They did Heathers, which was incredible. They've done Grease. And so it's a fully staged musical. So those are kids that know they want to do theater in either as they get older or in college. So it gives them a springboard to then move to our main stage. And so that's one way that we like to nurture that talent as well.
Sylvia, I got to see You're in Town with that program.
Right.
Redirected, and I was blown away by how much they were able to do with that musical in just 2 weeks.
In 2 weeks. And You're in Town's the one that I didn't see because I was out of town, but I heard it was incredible. And what they do in 2 weeks is, adults couldn't do that because we would be passed down the floor dead tired. But those kids, they can work miracles. It's amazing.
I didn't realize until afterwards that they had only had 2 weeks, and I thought they had been rehearsing for months.
Yeah, 2 weeks.
And I've been in You're in Town, and it was one of the hardest shows I've ever done. It's tons of words. It's tons of comedy. It's tons. Even though there's elements of the show that make it a little easier in some ways, it totally gets flipped with there's just so much under it, and it's really, really hard. So that's really cool that you guys did that.
A couple of years ago, so we did our TS3 program directed by Emily Klingman, who's a local actor and a theater teacher. She, an incredible costume designer as well.
Amazing costume designer.
Amazing costume designer. She did TS3, the Crucible. And she's been directing our dramas for TS3 for the past couple of years. And that Crucible was one of the best productions, bar none. I've seen Crucible 2 times. One when I was in high school, that the audience was so stunned they didn't applaud at the end of it at the School of the Arts in Winston. And this one was equally as good. It was just incredible. So I look at those kids and I think they're our community theater, or our professional actors of the future, or our doctors and lawyers who become patrons, in the future.
I know some of the theaters that I've worked at, the need for volunteers outside of performing is huge. And often in the theaters that I've worked in, we really needed a lot of volunteers outside of the staff and outside of on stage. Do you find that you need a lot of additional volunteers outside of your staff and outside of on stage? And if you do you find that you have trouble pulling in those volunteers?
Yes, we do at Theater Statesville have a great need for volunteers. We have an incredible front of house committee that runs our box office, and we have no trouble in that area. But when it comes to assisting the tech director or putting together a set or building a set, we struggle. And we have been trying now to to build that resume for ourselves so that we can call on new and different people. One of the ways we're doing it is with a new academy that we're starting, the Shooting Star Academy, that will not only house youth theater actors and performers and teenage performers and adult classes as well, but it's going to house our technical department where there will be classes in that regard. So yeah. So we have an incredible tech director who just joined our board, Jim Kay, who is, he's brilliant. He's from Florida. He's union. He's worked, this is what he's done his whole life, University of Florida. He ran their entire theater department. So wow. He's wanting to teach apprentices. So that's, God willing, where we're going to head once we start the academy and once we get up and running again, so that we can, because last season, I remember distinctly, there were so many kids who came to us to get free hours for community service, that they were more than willing to help us. And this way it can be channeled in the proper way, and we can teach them the proper way to do these things. So
that's a great program. Wow, that's wonderful.
Yeah, pretty excited.
Yeah.
So do you guys feel like your roles as artistic directors or creative directors have changed a lot over time? I know we sort of touched on it in the beginning a little bit, but do you think there's been more of a pull for you in a direction outside of the artistic and more of the in other areas of the business, or do you feel like you've mostly been able to focus on the creative and artistic side of things over the time in your role?
Well, for me, the jobs that I was once doing, now I'm kind of overseeing other people doing these jobs, which is awesome. So I don't have as much direct impact as I did, or I'm not teaching all the classes or sewing all the costumes. Not that I ever sewed all the costumes, but kind of was responsible for them. And well, so it's more of a, I mean, I don't want to say management, but sort of I think sort of a juggling job that I get to do now, because I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that, we do have an amazing team of people who both work at the theater as well as volunteer for the theater, and just kind of being a part, like a little piece of all these puzzle pieces, is kind of where I am now, as opposed to kind of having to do it all myself, or making sure that it all got done. Although, the hours are still there. In fact, they're probably a little more than when I was doing it all, but we are doing a lot more shows than we were 18 years ago also.
And I think for me, again, we're theater people, so we wear so many different hats, but, and like David and Sharon, we have a great team. I mean, our office is, it's, we've got Matt's wonderful to work with, and he and I work really well together. I always laugh because I'm always an idea person, and I always go to Matt and go, oh, we could do this. Oh, let's add 5 more shows to the season. And so we joke and say, Matt always says no 3 times before he says yes. So, I'm used to that now. But I think for me, one of the, as David, I oversee the TD, and, I hire the costumers. But there are times when I kind of flip into a scheduling role. So in the summer, I do lots of the load-in schedules for the Duke, and I do a lot more of the organizational end of things, and not as much of the art. I do the artistic stuff, but not as much of that in the summer. Mainly in the summer, my job really switches more to production manager, if you will. And then, but at the same time, maintaining that artistic eye. I go to quite a few rehearsals. If I'm not directing, I have to direct 2 shows a year. And I kind of am the DCP eyes on things, but, I think my job I think it's always evolving the way theater is. I do a lot of the community outreach and the community programming, which is not necessarily artistic, but it's still spreading our story. And my philosophy as an artistic director is always, and as just a director, is always to tell the story and tell it well. So whatever I have to do that, if it's not on my piece of paper that's under my job description, I'll go, oh, well, I'll do that. I can do that as well. So
I agree with you. And I'm sure David does too. Well, I was told by my board president that I'm the face of Theater Statesville. the artistic director is the face of Theater Statesville. And it's my job to not only oversee all of the artistic things, and by the way, I don't have a mat, so I do.
Yeah.
I do the budget.
Oh,
I know. I do the budget for every show in hand with our financial secretary. I then pass it on, and then we tweak, and then. But I initiate all of the budgets for every show. But I also get to go to Rotary and talk about an upcoming show and invite people to come to see it and things like that. And I try to get out into the community and do that outreach as much as I can, because that's what brings in more volunteers, and it's what brings in more actors, and it's just the way it works here. So
that's really smart. Yeah.
And it's interesting. I did want to bring this up too. In terms of, you're doing this as a job. You guys are working all day. And then, as you mentioned, Sylvia, for you have to direct 2 shows a year. I know at the Green Room, often you guys on the staff are utilized to help direct different shows, which I know is something that you want to do.
Right.
It can be really challenging because it means early in the morning till late at night and all day.
Absolutely.
12-hour days all the time. Yeah.
When did the text start? 7 a.m.
Right.
Both your
dinner at 11.
Right.
So how does that sort of work-life balance? How do you have one? Can you have one? Is it,
Well, I will say that let's call it the time of COVID has been a very different experience for myself and my partner David Townsend, who also works at the theater, which is kind of nice because we get to work together. But yeah, really 65-hour, 70-hour weeks are not uncommon, and they are 7 days a week. Because what I found was that even though I work there full time, a lot of my volunteers can only work on Saturdays and Sundays. So I'll be there, doing costumes on Saturday and Sunday, even when I'm rehearsing, Sunday through Thursday. So it's sort of like, everybody you work with has different schedules, and you've kind of got to be open to do a little bit of all of it. Our office at 9:30 or 10 o'clock every day, which is better than some jobs. But
my daughter always says to me, "Mom, you got to have boundaries." I just don't. Well, I have no boundaries.
My husband says that to me as well.
How do you have boundaries? I want to know.
You can't. If somebody needs something, I'm going to do it right away, or I'm going to get back to them immediately. It's
Find
just
somebody.
Exactly. It's my.
I'll get this. You may get text from your stage manager from backstage, and you're taking that night off, and something's happened, and you've got to run to the theater.
Yeah. What are you going to do? Say not now? I say night off? No.
Right.
I've given up tickets to have to go back to the theater and do stuff because somebody. Yeah. But
exactly.
And I think that we just answered the question: why are we in the positions we're in?
Right. Because
we will be
passion. We love it. We love, and I think that's the quality question that you had as well, because, we try to do better, and we'll push ourselves to do better. And with each show that we do, or, even if it means working a few extra hours to make sure this looks the right way, or this person's got it the right way. And then I also look at all of our volunteers that we have volunteering, giving their time. And I'm like, they don't have to do this. They're choosing to do this, and they're supporting me and my paycheck. And so I want to be as much support as I can back to them as well. And the wonderful creative teams that we're able to hire.
You probably feel like I do now that during COVID, I've been home longer. My husband and I have been married a little over 15 years. And in the last couple of months, I've been home longer in the evenings. I've been home more evenings than I've been in the entire time, almost 20 years we've been together, and I look at each other, we look at each other, I'm like, I need to be going to rehearsal. This is weird. What do we do?
As long as you still like each other, it's all okay.
Well, most of the time.
Well, in our kitchen, we've discovered our kitchen, which is, I know you guys cook, but this is something that we've learned how to do a little bit more than we have in the past.
And same way with our garden, where I've taken a lot of walks.
A lot of crocheting over here.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much. I think this was just such a great conversation. So many good points being brought up and talked about. And I look forward to getting to know you all more as we go and having you back in the future for other episodes. As we kind of wrap up this idea, can you talk to me a little bit about what your, outside of COVID, because we know COVID has things a little messier than we'd like, but sort of your ideal vision for your theater in the future and your ideal vision for the interconnectivity of all of our community theaters in the region as we go forward.
Well, that to me, the interconnectivity is probably one of the most important facets for me right now. I view us all as a community of theaters, not just community theater. And I think we are all here to support each other, whether it's ad bartering or if you need a stage manager and I'm dark right now, have at it, that kind of thing. Actors going from theater to theater to doing shows. I think that we need to be very supportive of each other. That's one of the things I've really learned during COVID. So that is one of my visions. And for Theater Statesville itself, I can't wait until we get into our own home finally. And if everything works right and things are moving along, we should be able to see that in about 18 months, I hope.
That's great.
And so exciting for you guys.
It's very exciting. And so that to me that's going to be a game changer for Theater Statesville. It's just going to be a game changer. And so that's God willing what the future holds for us.
And Theater Statesville has been around as an entity for a long time.
Since 1958.
Yes, a lot longer than the Green Room. But I have heard some statistics about theaters not having their own space, and the fact that it's still going and growing and strong is really awesome.
We're trying. We're the little engine that could.
I mean, having our own space made a huge difference to what we were able to do, and I got to be a part of that whole process, which was awesome.
And I think the same for us for DCP is that, we have lots of spaces, and sometimes I feel like we are limited only by our space. I mean, we're in a large Lake Norman region, and our audience space, I mean, even though we're Davidson community players, when we look at our audience demographics, we're pretty evenly spread between Huntersville, Cornelius, Davidson, and Mooresville. So we are looking, we're always looking for a space, we've got, our board has been spending a lot of time on this and trying to really find a place that will embrace our community, because we would like to be able to do more than one musical a year. We would like to be able to reach more members of our community, bring in the school kids. And so we are limited by our space. I think we do an amazing job with what we have, but we are always, and we're always looking to the future and to see how we can grow and how we can attract more people and how we can tell more stories of the people in our community as well. So that's our biggest challenge right now, besides COVID, of course. Now we're looking at outdoor fields. We'd love to have a big open amphitheater somewhere.
A drive-in theater.
I've read about drive-in theaters, or that the drive-through where people go from like location to location and see.
That's what Davidson College is doing. A group, it's Exit 30 Ensemble, and they're doing it next weekend. It's $10 a car. I'm really excited to go see it.
Which is kind of like Theater Statesville, the progressive
the Christmas Carol,
which was awesome. And
and Lee Street did that as well with their trolley Christmas Carol. Although you're all in a trolley, but the trolley Carol.
Oh, great.
And for you, David, what is your sort of view? Is it similar to what they were saying?
Well, it is. I love the interconnectivity of the community theaters that are in this area. And it's so easy to get so absorbed into your own little world and trying to like put out one fire after another when you're in the middle of a show, but it really is very important to have these relationships and to support each other during this time.
And you just mentioned the volunteers a minute ago and volunteer pool. What a wonderful thing if we all created a pipeline where we could just share people and share ideas. I mean,
great idea.
Directors with the Green Room now, just trying to open up those opportunities for as many artists in the area as we can.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's great.
Well, thank you guys so much for being a part of this. We have really loved talking to you. And I want to just remind all of our listeners to like and follow Theater Statesville, The Green Room, Davidson Community Players on social media. We're going to have their links on our website and on our social media page. So we hope that you'll visit those locations and like and follow so you can hear about the great work they're doing in the future as they navigate COVID and as we look into the new normal and the next chapter for us all. And then I just want to thank the audience for being part of listening to this episode today and hearing the great feedback from these local theaters in our area. How lucky we are to have so many wonderful local theaters in our area. Also, a reminder that this episode is one of 3 as part of our launch. So along with our What We're All About episode, Creativity in the Coronavirus, and our Live or Nothing episode, all of which can be found on Apple Podcasts. So please check us out there and listen to those other episodes. And just a reminder to like and follow us on social media for future updates and future episodes. We thank you so much for being a part of it and being part of our community. And we hope you have a great day. See you next time.